Alrighty, everybody. Welcome into this time to Maine. And today we're reading through Daniel chapters 5 and 6. Boy, it's bright out here today. I can barely see anything on my screen. Alrighty, there we go. I have to adjust that. Alright, so, to start. Alright, so we're reading through Daniel chapter 5. Writing on the wall. King Belshazzar gave a great banquet for 1,000 of his nobles and drank wine with them. While Belshazzar was drinking his wine, he gave orders to bring in the gold and silver goblets that Nebuchadnezzar, his father, had taken from the temple in Jerusalem, so that the king and his nobles, his wife, and his concubine might drink from them. So they brought in the gold goblets that had been taken from the temple of God in Jerusalem. The king and his nobles, his wife, his concubines, drank from them. As they drank wine, they praised the gods of gold and silver, of bronze, iron, wood, stone, and stone. Suddenly the fingers of a human hand appeared and wrote on a plaster of the wall near the lampstand in the royal palace. The king watched the hand as it wrote. His face turned pale, and he was so frightened that his legs became weak and his knees were knocking. The king summoned enchanters as astrologers and diviners. Then he said to those wise men of Babylon, "Whoever reads this writing and tells me what it means will be clothed in purple and gold chain placed around his neck, and he will be made the third highest ruler in the kingdom." Then all the king's wise men came in, but they could not read the writing or tell the king what it meant. So King Nebuchadnezzar became even more terrified, and his face grew more pale. The nobles were baffled. The queen, hearing the voices of the king and his noble, came into the banquet hall. "May the king live forever," she said. "Don't be alarmed. Don't look so pale. There is a man in your kingdom who has a spirit of the holy gods in him. In the time of your father, he was found to have insight and intelligence and wisdom that like that of gods. Your father, King Nebuchadnezzar, appointed him chief to the magicians, enchanters, astrologers, and diviners. He did this because Daniel, whom the king called Belteshazzar, was found to have a keen mind and knowledge and understanding, also the ability to interpret dreams, explain riddles, and solve difficult problems. Call for Daniel. He will tell you what the writing means." So Daniel was brought before the king. And the king said to him, "Are you Daniel, one of the exiles my father the king brought from Judah? I have heard that the spirit of the gods in you, and that you have I have heard that the spirit of the gods is in you, and that you have insight, intelligence, and understanding, wisdom. The wise men and enchanter were brought before me to with read this writing and tell me what it means, but they could not explain. Now I have heard that you are able to give interpretations and solve difficult problems. If you can read this writing and tell me what it means, you will be clothed in purple and have a gold chain placed around your neck, and you will be made the third highest ruler in the kingdom." Then Daniel answered the king, "You may keep your gifts for yourself and give your rewards to someone else. Nevertheless, I will read the writing for the king and tell him what it means. Your Majesty, the Most High God gave your father Nebuchadnezzar sovereignty and greatness and glory and splendor because of the highest position he gave him. All the nations and people of every language dreaded and feared him. Those the king wanted to put to death, he put to death. So he wanted to spare, he spared. Those he wanted to promote, he promoted. And those he wanted to humble, he humbled. But when his heart became arrogant and hardened with pride, he was he was disposed from his royal throne and stripped of his glory. He was driven away from people and given the mind of an animal. He lived with the wild donkey and ate grass like the ox. His body was drenched with dew of heaven until his neck, until he acknowledged the Most High God is sovereign over all kingdoms on earth, and set over them anyone he wishes. But Belshazzar, his son, have not humbled yourself, though you know all this. Instead, you have set yourself up against the Lord of heaven, and had the goblets from his temple brought to you, and you and your nobles, your wives and concubines, drank wine from them. You praised the gods of silver and gold, of bronze and iron, wood and stone, which cannot see or hear or understand. But you did not honor the gold, who holds in the God, who holds in his hand your life in all your ways. Therefore he sent the hand that wrote the inscription. This is the inscription. This is the inscription that was written. Many, many, tekel, parson. Here's what the words mean. Many, God is numbered the days of your region and brought it to an end. Tekel, you have been weighed on the scale and found wanting. Presir, your kingdom is divided and given to Medes and Persan. Then Belshazzar commanded Daniel was clothed in purple, a gold chain was placed around his neck, and he was proclaimed the third highest ruler in the kingdom. That very night, Belshazzar, king of Babylonians, was slain, and Darius the Mede took over the kingdom at the age of 26. So, he basically, nobody else could read this again. Daniel was the only one in the kingdom that could understand what God's saying and what God wanted. And God just wanted to send a message to King Nebuchadnezzar, because King Nebuchadnezzar, as you noticed, he gave all his paganists and his people that did witchcraft the chance before the guy that actually followed God and what the Lord wants and all that. And that's, again, we see the evidence here in this story that, like, people like Nebuchadnezzar kept putting God last. And what it's going to eventually lead to, and I haven't read this story yet, but I'm sure this story is going to lead to where Nebuchadnezzar is going to ultimately learn what he's doing is wrong. And he's slowly but surely learning over the course of time that he's wrong about every time when he uses sorcery of some sorts. So that's the meaning of this. I think that's the meaning of this book. So, all right, let's get into chapter 6. Daniel in a den of lions. Chapter 6. It pleased Darius to appoint 120 satraps to rule throughout the kingdom, with 3 administrators over them, one of whom was Daniel. The satrap were made accountable to them so that the king might not suffer loss. Now Daniel so distinguished himself among the administrators and the satraps by his exceptional qualities that the king planned to set him over the whole kingdom. At this, the administrators and the satraps tried to find ground for changes against Daniel in his conduct of government affairs, but they were unable to do so. They could find no corruption in him, because he was trustworthy, and neither corrupt nor negligent. Finally, these men said, "We will never find any basis for changes against this man, Daniel, unless it has something to do with the laws of his God." So these ministers and satraps went as a group to the king and said, "May King Darius live forever." The royal ministers, prefects, satraps, advisors, and governors all have agreed that the king should issue an edict and enforce the decree that anyone who prays to any god or human being during the next 30 days, except you, your majesty, shall be thrown into the lion's den. Now, your majesty issues the decree and put it in writing so that it cannot be altered in accordance with the law of Medes and Persians, which cannot be repelled. So King Darius put the decree in writing. Hold on, my back itches. It's hot out here. Now, when Daniel learned that the decrees had been published, he went home to upstairs to his upstairs room, where the windows opened toward Jerusalem. 3 times a day he got down on his knees and prayed, giving thanks to his God, just as he done before. Then these men went as a group and found Daniel praying and asking God for help. So they went to the king and spoke to him about his royal decree. "Did you not publish a decree that during the next 30 days anyone who prays to any god or human being except your majesty would be thrown into the lion's den?" The king answered, "The decree stands in accordance with the law of Medes and Persians, which cannot be repelled." Then they said to the king, "Daniel, who is one of the exiles from Judah, pays no attention to you, your majesty, or to the decree you put in writing. He still prays 3 times a day." When the king heard this, he was greatly distressed. He was determined to rescue Daniel and made every effort until sundown to save him. Then the men went as a group to the king Darius and said to him, "Remember, your majesty, that according to the law of Medes, Persians, no decree or edict that the king issues can be changed." So the king gave the order, and they brought Daniel and threw him into the lion's den. The king said to Daniel, "May your God, whom you serve, continually rescue you." A stone was brought and placed over the mouth of the den, and the king sealed it with his own signet ring, and with the rings of his nobles, so that Daniel's situation might not be changed. Then the king returned to his palace and spent the night without eating and without any entertainment being brought to him, and he could not sleep. At the first light of dawn, the king got up and hurried to the lion's den. When he came near the den, he called to Daniel in anguished voice, "Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God, whom you serve, continually been able to rescue you from the lions?" Daniel answered, "May the king live forever. My God sent his angel, and he shut the mouth of the lion. They have not hurt me because I was found innocent in his sight, nor have I ever done any wrong before you, your majesty." The king was overjoyed and gave orders to Daniel out of the den. When Daniel was lifted from the den, No wound was found on him because he was trusted in his God. At the king's command, the men who had fiercely accused Daniel were brought in and thrown into the lion's den, along with their wives and children. And before they reached the floor of the den, the lions overpowered them and crushed all their bones. Then King Darius wrote all the nations and people of every language in all the earth, may you prosper greatly. I issue a decree that in every part of my kingdom people must fear and reverence the God of Daniel. For he is the living God, and he endures forever. His kingdom will not be destroyed. His dominion will never end. He rescues and he saves. He performs signs and wonders. In the heavens, on all the earth, he has rescued Daniel from the power of the lions. So Daniel prospered during the reign of Darius and the reign of Cyrus the Persian. Alright, so as you can see, Nebuchadnezzar just kept testing Daniel, and he just keeps testing Daniel. We're gonna find out what happens in this book. I'm liking this so far. I'm liking what it teaches. It teaches us not to question what God wants and not question God's people, especially when, I do it myself. I try to teach lessons to God. I try to teach people, hey, you know what, this is gonna happen if, things don't change. And a lot of people don't believe me. And then later on down the line, after I say something, we usually see something pop up. And I've seen that go on plenty of times where like some random like curse happens throughout a group of people, and then people just usually don't like think it's God. They think that there's something, they think that it's just you know life it's that they think it's a coincidence. It's never a coincidence. When I say something is gonna happen, you know, I usually can sense in the air that something's gonna happen. And right now, for me, I can sense there's a huge blessing coming away, and I sense that there is going to be better income for me in the future, better things going on, stuff like that. And it just goes to show you how easy it is to listen to God, but you have to remain by yourself. That's why most of the time when you see people following God, they're not in groups. They're not in huge groups. You'll see most people I communicate with that are of God, they're always by themselves. They're off doing their own thing. They're off having a happy, merrily time. They're not doing anything together with groups of people. And that's one thing that I will say I see a lot of with Christians and people that follow God and what they tell them. You'll notice that the people that follow God mainly the right way are usually the ones off doing things by themselves. If you see a person completely by themselves, God's chosen them for a bigger, better purpose, and that's what people need to understand. People that are chosen for a better purpose usually have a gift, and that's part of what the stories of these prophets are. Because take notice, in King Nebuchadnezzar's time, there was multiple prophets going on in his time, and probably each of these stories didn't take place after the other, but they could have more or less taken place exactly at the same time as each other. That's something that I was sitting there thinking. I was like, do these prophets take place after one another, or do they take place exactly at the same time? So that's something to definitely think about when it comes down to it. If you're talking to somebody that's Christian and they're by themselves, and you see a bunch of people picking on them, chances are they're doing their own thing, man. And that's a good Christian right there. That's a person that is that is a person that God has a grasp on, a grasp that most people don't have. And it's not rare for me to see it, but it's rare for the world around me to see it. They won't listen to an outcast. Now, every now and then I run into an outcast that I had a problem in an argument with. And I did it today where I ran into somebody that is kind of an outcast. I think they don't realize that they are deeply connected to God, and I don't think they realize how deeply connected they are to God. So I told this guy, like, look, I'm letting you know this, even though we don't get along. I'm letting you know that right now, at this very time, I see fake profiles being made of you, and I see fake profiles being made of me. And this is going on with in our internet. Like, and the thing about me is, everybody, I'm a total outcast. That's something I just genuinely chose to accept. And you'll take notice that with somebody like me, I follow God, and a lot of times I have stuff happen to me I don't like, and that's just genuinely how it works. Sometimes people of God, well, they get the worst sometimes, and they don't, it's just not fun sometimes, and that's something you'll see with all of us. You'll always see it with the people of God. They're the outcasts. They're the people doing stuff by themselves. They're the people that they intertwine with each other, but you don't see them all click together to back one each other up. And that's part of the reason that you'll see me do things on my own, and you'll see me go down on my own. I don't have a group of people behind me. The only thing I have behind me are angels of God and stuff like that. And even sometimes, like even with social media, the angels of God don't always, the angels of God don't work on social media, but the angels of God, like in actual reality, I've been protected pretty well. But there's stuff that happens that's out of my power sometimes, and outside of me, that just I have some horrible stuff happen to me. So again, if you're a loner just like me, and you're connected to God, there's a reason God chose us. We have a bigger, better purpose than most average people do. And I have people pick on me all the time for being the way I am. But hey, I am what I am, and it's how God wanted me, and God's putting me right where He wants me, and God's telling me, hey, there's more on your way. So just hang in there. If you have God with you, or you're following God, don't test the man. Keep following. Don't try to blend into your crowd, because sometimes God won't even let you do that. So, anyway, have a good day. God bless. Take it easy. I'm going to go in and cool down. I didn't realize it was hot out here. I was going to go do something, but it's like extreme hot. So, I don't know if I'm going to go do it now. So, all right. Take it easy. God bless.